It is raining, raining, cats and dogs this morning. I've got my front door open just so I have some light. Been on my computer. Let's turn some light on. Been on my computer since early this morning. I'm gonna do some yapping. Let me get the microphone situated. How are you? What are you doing? Don't mind the hair. I was trimming on it again this morning. I've been wearing it up in a ponytail, and when I take it out of the ponytail, it breaks. And I should know better, but it gets on my last nerve. And I look like something out of the 70s. But what have you been watching on TV? What have you been working on? What's your skill? What's your talent? Have you been replaced? Are you looking to be replaced? I got things to say, and I don't exactly know how to say them this morning. What do you do when you have a set of skills and you don't know where to place the skill set, and you're relying on somebody else to put you in a different position? I was eating peanuts this morning. I was hungry. Once again, craving, a Gatlinburg breakfast, and here I am in St. Louis sitting here trying to up my subscribe. But I'm watching traffic. When you see me look that way, I'm looking out the window. Sometimes there's a lot of activity on my street, which I find is so weird because I live at the end of a road, and it's blocked off by cow gates, so the subdivision is separate from a set of apartments. So when you see me look that way, I'm either watching what the weather's doing or I'm watching traffic fly in and out. The other night, I'm just yapping. I'll get back to what I was talking about. But the other night, I had went up to my neighbor around the corner, the one that had given me a bunch of plants at the beginning of the growing season. And we're sitting in her backyard, and her and I are just talking. We were talking about jobs and careers and where she went to school, where I had gone to school. Just kind of finding more out about each other. She's young, 42, same age as my oldest. And, we're just catching up and talking and laughing and cutting up and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, we hear a bunch of kids. And I say to her, "Oh my God, what is that?" And she said, "Well, it sounds like they're all playing right in front of your house." Now, I live at a T. Almost every house I have ever lived on, I live on a T. It's kind of crazy. But anyway, I said, "I wonder what's going on." And all of a sudden we start to hear bucket trucks and concrete breaking, and there was a water main break right in front of my house, and it shut the whole neighborhood down. So her and I are laughing and everything, and I had said to her, and of course I'm on my phone looking to see where it is, and the kid wasn't home, and I knew the dogs were fine. A person can be without water for just a little bit. But anyway, all the noise of the kids that we heard was because they were playing in that water main break, and there was a sinkhole. When I came home, they had, and I walked up there. I was going to drive, and I'm glad I didn't, because they had the whole neighborhood shut down with vehicles and everything. But that sinkhole, it must have went down 8 to 10 feet. And I watched them. Let's see, what time did I get home? Because it wasn't late. I went up there at 5:30, and I was probably back home by 9. and the kid didn't get home till almost 10 because he was working and he had to park up around the corner. But anyway, my point being, if you see me looking that way, it's because I'm looking out the front door, or I'm looking out the window to see what is happening, because sometimes there's a lot of activity here. But back to our regularly scheduled program. When you have a skill and you have a talent and you are not able to place it anywhere, what do you do with it? Where do you take it? And how does that make you feel, knowing that you have this skill set and this intelligence, and you've been educated enough for your skill set, and you are not able to utilize it in the capacity that you know how to? The one company that I interviewed with last week, that they were more than happy to take me on, they don't know where to place me, what to really do with me, and the things that they are sending me. I'm going to get you situated different here. Where they are trying to place me and get me in a role is the one thing I have said I do not want to do. I don't want to be on the floor of a restaurant, a banquet hall, any food service. I don't want no part of it. I don't want to be at a restaurant. I don't want to carry a tray. I can't. My hands keep going numb, bad shoulder. We all know my back went out, and it has not been right since. I don't mind so much if it's a higher entity that I'm bartending for, but I no longer want to bartend. You know, I'll go be a barista. I'll go make coffee. I'll throw a little Kahlua in your coffee if you need it. Maybe counter work, gourmet work, marketing, scheduling, coordinating. People only want to pick and choose what is serving them, and it's not serving me. Or is it serving you? You know, right now, the job market, there are jobs out there. There really are. But how much are you willing to give up of who you are just to have an income? And is it worth your sanity to go in to do something that is, not that you're better than somebody, because nobody likes that aspect, but you are out of your element because you are overqualified for what they are needing. And then whomever it is, you've dumbed down enough to go work for somebody else in an entity just to get that paycheck, and they want to know why you're not happy. So many times in this last restaurant, when they were talking about, you know, there's always one rah-rah cheerleader person. And, you know, and I would think to myself, this is your life. This isn't my life. This is what you chose. This is just kind of what I thought I was going to do till I could retire and try to make some money with it. Thinking. That was my first mistake, I thought. Because I don't conform, and I don't fall in line with how other people survive in life. So last night, I'm laying in bed going over all of these things that this company is sending me, and I'm like, that is not what I signed up for. That is not what you said you were going to hire me in to do. It's raining here in St. Louis, Missouri. I don't even want to get in my car to go try to find something, because I feel like I'm chasing a tail. What am I looking for? What am I trying to achieve? I mean, my resume is impeccable, and it shows so much of one skill set on top of the hospitality stuff. But people can't overlook the hospitality stuff, and it is very frustrating when you were trying to lean out of one entity and to go into something else. So here today, I thought I'd get up, I'd put myself together, and maybe I'd leave the house, but now it's pouring down rain. And the only thing I can say is, we needed this rain. We needed this rain. It can like douse life right now, because I feel like there's so many things that just need to be washed away. So, what about you? Where you at? What are you doing? What's the weather doing? And how is your skill set working for you? How's it working for you? And what do you plan to do with the skill set when whatever your endeavor is that you're in now no longer serves you? I had to get off of doom scrolling last night. I was starting to have some panic attacks, which happens. I get overstimulated mentally. But I cannot watch any more of that Clancy trial. And I haven't been watching it diligently because I don't watch TV and I don't stay on one program too long. I have to go blow my nose. Hold on a minute. And I don't know how to pause this. Hang on. I'll be back. Don't look at anything. Hang on. Okay. Sorry. With this rain comes humidity, and with the humidity comes allergies. But the Clancy, I can hardly watch it anymore. And yesterday, what I saw, and I'm going to segue into something else with that, because I said I didn't want to talk about that too much, because I think actually it's starting to trigger. It is starting to trigger. It is bringing up things that I don't want to even deal with anymore. But I watched her do this, what they call stemming, where it looked like she became very disoriented because she became very, very overwhelmed with what was being presented. And all of those that were speaking on her behalf, God love them. God love them. And, and I'll say it again, he did it. She didn't do it. He did it. But watching her yesterday, when something becomes too much in your life, psychosis sets in on many different levels. How do I want to say it? Because I'm not a doctor. I say this too. It's a disclaimer. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. No big MD, no big degree behind me. But I've gone through some stuff. There are so many various degrees of psychosis. And when you have been gaslit, manipulated, under narcissistic abuse, your brain cannot decipher what is real, what is not real, and physically your body starts to react. And that's yesterday. Like I said, I don't watch it all the time, I only get little clips of it. But yesterday I saw the effects of it is becoming too much. And when elements present themselves as truth in front of you, when you have been made to believe something different, cognitive dissonance sets in. So, let me run down this little path. It is not normal. It is not normal unless, you live a very toxic life and very toxic type relationship. It is not normal to have one partner and then know in your mind you're going to discard this partner to go be with somebody else. Now, people cheat. We all know it. We've seen it. We've all experienced it one way in our lives or another. We've witnessed it. There are chronic cheaters, people who are always chasing that high, always looking for that next best thing, always looking for that transactional because they have sucked the life or financially, drained somebody, and whatever they have no longer works for them, so they already have somebody waiting in the wings. We all realize that's not normal, healthy behavior, right? Are you aware of that? It is not normal, healthy behavior when you have children and you become so disassociated to your children that you go on to have a whole other life as if your children don't exist. And there are circumstances sometimes that we cannot help, and I use the term we. Those who have taken a job abroad, and that is your job. You're working somewhere else, doing something else, and somebody is left to, care for your children. That is completely different. But it is not normal behavior to completely disregard you already have a significant other and you have children, and there have been photo proof of this life, and then all of a sudden that gets discarded as if it never ever existed, and you go on to somebody else and start all over. Now, in that particular case, I am talking about Clancy case. It is not normal. It is not normal to leave your children unattended at home. We know that, right? As a parent, as a healthy human being, you don't leave your children to fend for themselves, especially if you are the sole parent. Now, let me stop here for anybody who wants to be a big critic in this. My grandma lived with me for a lot of years with my older kids. I worked a lot. I played a little bit. It was right after my divorce. My children were never left unattended, ever. I didn't bring people home into my house. They didn't stay the night. I was not a serial dater, none of that. My children were never left alone. They were either with my aunt or they were with my grandma. And then I'd always come home, mostly after work. I worked in a bar and a grill, and my shift would be done by 5, and maybe I'd be home by 7. I was home at night. It is not normal. It is not normal. It is not healthy behavior as a parent to get off of work and run to whomever's home, to some establishment, staying till it closes, leaving your children unattended. It is not normal and healthy behavior. We see it all the time. You don't dog the other parent, regardless of what you think about them, feel about them. You don't harbor those things in front of your children. You don't make your children feel bad for your hatred towards their other parent, right? We know that. I think a lot of us have learned that, and I use that term, a lot of us, in a very broad aspect. As much as I won't say hate my ex-husband. He's not my favorite person. He probably wasn't my favorite person when I married him, but I did it anyway, and lasted 11 years. I tried really, really hard not to say anything about him in front of the kids Because children at one point in time always wake up and they see the truth, they see the reality. And it was only at one point in time that my kids saw something when they were in their teens and they realized all the things that were talked about in a random kind of way. They saw the truth. You don't make your spouse, your partner, whomever you are involved with children, you don't drive them away, and you don't keep your children away from the other parent, right? We're aware of that. We're aware of if there was an issue between a mother and a father, and both parties, are cheating on each other, you don't badmouth the other parent when you're doing the exact same thing, right? And then because you've lost control over a situation, because you've lost control, you don't try to punish that other parent for the role that you're in or the role that you have created because you were trying to play the hero and then now all of a sudden you're the victim, when that parent had a very big hand and why maybe that parent would have left. You don't use that other parent as a scapegoat. When you have two parents and you are taking care of children, your kids mostly always come first. You have your needs. You know what it takes to raise your house. You know what you need to do, to remain happy and healthy and maintain a lifestyle within your home. And we realize, I would like to think, it's not the other person's responsibility to maintain the lifestyle that you were looking for. It's not transactional. It's two people who are participating in the same life with the same goal, looking for the same end result. Finances are a dual responsibility. I've said this 1,000,000,000 times. There's always going to be one person that makes more money than somebody else. When there is that upheaval or that ebb and flow, if somebody is making more money and the other person is contributing in some other way, because you're not able to get your needs met that you feel you are entitled to or deserving of, you don't go outside of your relationship to get that need met. Again, having a transactional, because at some point there is a repetitive pattern of what you've always done your entire life and what you will continue to do until you recognize the pattern. And I really, really want to be specific on a couple things, and I'm thinking in my head how I want to do this. There's a particular situation that I'm very familiar with. Two individuals had gotten divorced. There were kids involved. And one made more money than the other. The one that made more money footed the bill for everything, while the other person did whatever it needed to do in order to fulfill that narcissistic void. Children were left behind. The mother ends up leaving. She can't take it anymore. She's pretty much been driven crazy. Both parents are addicts in one way or another. And when the financial house all collapsed, it was the mother that got blamed. It was the mother that was made out to be the bad guy. When again, in a relationship, when you are married and you have children, it is a group effort. You do what's best with what you have to work with. Well, because she had decided she was going to leave and she couldn't take it anymore, she left. She moved out. Because he was angry, he had lost control of his financial situation, lost control of the manipulation and the gaslighting. That parent, on purpose, held his children back, kept his children away from their mother, and every ounce, within every breath, he did everything and anything to speak poorly about the wife in a situation he created because he could not participate and equally match what was happening in their marriage. Goes back to, I'm watching, bits and pieces of this Clancy thing. And if you look back to anything in her life, she was going to school. She wanted to be a nurse. She was a labor and delivery nurse. She was highly educated. She was intelligent. It takes a lot to become anything in the medical field, on top of the fact of you got to overlook what the corporate part of health is that we know today since 2020. But she was a young girl with a promising future. She wanted to be married. She wanted to have kids. There are pictures where she is so happy and she's loving her children and she's doing what she needs to do. But the father, her husband, couldn't be bothered. Had brought in a nanny to help. Had the last baby, postpartum set in, and she had become very depressed. Being in the medical field, it is readily available, and anybody can correct me if I am wrong. When you are in the medical field, it is readily available to get a prescription pill. I don't know what I can say on live and what I can't. Readily available. You know the doctors, you know the nurses. What I find so ironic and so funny is, and there's no such thing as a coincidence in this life. And if you look at a situation and play it all backwards, and it may not make a lot of sense till you take that situation and you roll it way, way back to the beginning, and then you go forward and you start to look at all the characters that are involved or that have been involved in your life, and you see the play-by-play. In her particular case, he had already had somebody in place and had started to neglect, started to disassociate with his children. His children were too much of a burden. She was too much of a burden. Manipulating her and gaslighting her and honestly driving her insane, knowing and having contact with everybody in her medical field. There are characters, there are play-by-plays. So once you start to look at all the intricate parts of this situation, and this is on the extreme case, because I think about, and I don't correlate, but I can understand how one person trying to get something over on somebody else will make them believe something that is not true, because they no longer have a need, they no longer can have a benefit from being with that individual. So in her particular case, he had driven her absolutely insane. And if you start to look at all the pieces that are now showing up, my Fitbit I loved my Fitbit. It's not working anymore because Fitbit was purchased by Google. My big concern, and I'll get to another point, my big concern is, why does Google need to know all of our bodily functions and health things? Why does Google need to know how much I'm exercising or how many steps in a day I'm doing? Why does it need to know my heart rate, my weight, all those things? Why? It was one thing when my Fitbit, because at one particular time, when I was coming out of my abusive situation, I didn't know what to think or how to think, because the discard was so brutal and the betrayal was just as bad as being pushed out of an airplane thinking your parachute's going to work, and it doesn't. So walking, I needed to know how far I was walking. I needed to know what exactly steps, because this is something, when you were suffering from panic and anxiety and you had these over exaggerated fears, paranoia sets in because you don't know what's real and what's not real. You second guess anything and everything that you do in your life. In order to have some form of clarity, I walked every other day 3 to 6 miles. And I was saying this to my friend up the block the other day, because she's going through some stuff, and I'm like, you just walk it away, walk it out. And, bits and pieces I'm telling her, you walk. You walk till your body physically says, I can't walk anymore, because somewhere along the physical activity, it matches up to your brain chemistry. It matches, it levels. When you reach a peak in your physical performance, something levels out in your brain. Dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine. There's like 4 or 5 different parts of your brain that fire on all cylinders. Epinephrine, I think it is. So, as I was walking, and I'm going to get back to the Fitbit thing. When I was walking 3 to 6 miles, I needed my Fitbit to tell me. So then, when I was physically exhausted, I could look at my watch, and I could correlate with why I was so physically tired. Well, I had done work. Now, within all that, and I did that for about 6 months, every other day, 3 to 6 miles. I'd walk my trail. I'd walk that trail till I could not walk. You'd have to kind of know what area I'm in. I would walk up to Morganford. I'm about midway at the Metro Link in Shrewsbury. I'll say that. I'm midway. I would walk from my home up to Morganford. Then I would come back, and there was a bridge that went over River du Pere. And then I would walk all the way over to Loughborough. And then I would come back that same way. And then I would come all the way back home. Every other day I did that, 3 to 6 miles. Every great once in a while I'd go over to JB Park and I'd walk there. Wasn't the same. Wasn't the same therapeutics. Because once your brain associates with being familiar and in a comfortable environment, it allows you to have the safety to be able to feel what you need to feel. So, back to the Lindsay Clancy, she had an Apple Watch. Now they're using that Apple Watch as evidence because in that particular situation he took it off of her. And I don't want to get into specifics and details because it just keeps getting more and more, it gets more and more upsetting knowing how one human being can calculate so much that it destroys a person's life. After 2 years out of my abusive narcissistic relationship, when I was starting to put those puzzle pieces together, because there are patterns. There are patterns. And when I was studying life coaching to help with my art classes, not to be a doctor, not to be a psychiatrist, not to be a psychologist, because growing up, you're always told, pay attention to the logical things, don't pay attention to the creative things. But when you don't have those creative things, the logical parts of your life never work. So 2 years outside of that relationship, one, I drastically lost weight. Drastic. Went from 160 pounds down to 104 pounds. Trying to get that physical level to match the brain chemistry. Knowing, I know who I am, I know what I want to do, I know how I was trying to live my life, what I was trying to achieve, when I was made to believe something completely different. Now, on top of all that, because of all of that gaslight and manipulation and betrayal and abuse on so many different levels, I ended up with an autoimmune disease. And they're calling it one thing for money and the medical health, but it's actually something else. So when we're looking at this Clancy woman, and I'm watching her yesterday, and the level of psychosis, because it is becoming too hard to bear, because reality is starting to set in, and she is starting to see how everything really, really went down. So I'm going to ask you right now, whoever you are, look at your life, and what are you going through? And what are you having a hard time participating in, being present in? What part of right now can you not get a grip? Again, I'm not a doctor, not a psychologist. Don't play anything on TV in regards to that. But there is a method to why you were believing in the manner that you were believing. Fear and anxiety is nothing but an over-exaggerated thought that does not exist. And if you give in to those over-exaggerated thoughts, it will lead you to some form of a psychosis. You become very paranoid. You become so aware of your surroundings. Your heightened sense of reality completely changes. So if you play your life back in the anxiety that you are sitting in right now, whether you're agoraphobic, you can't leave your house, you've isolated yourself, go back. At what point can you pinpoint the trigger moment in which someone said something, did something, had an integral part of your life that made you believe something that was not true? Think about it. Think about all those things in life that you've wanted to do. All of those things in life that somebody was in the back of your head, physically, mentally, not that you're hearing voices, because that is a sign of real issues when you are hearing some voices, unless you are clairvoyant and you can channel and speak to the dead, which I do believe there are people out there that can do that. But think about that person that stood behind you in your life that told you, you can't do that, leave it alone, don't touch it. You can't take that home. That's not who you are. That's not who we are. This is not how we live. This is not how you were raised. And it took away from your identity. And by taking away that identity, you started to disassociate with who you really, really are as a human being. And I'm sitting here watching bits and pieces of this trial that just keeps getting more and more and more tragically upsetting. We have a woman whose life has been dismantled by one man who she put all her eggs in a basket with, that did nothing but harm her tragically in the end. So for all of you women out there, and this is not bashing any men, because I know there are narcissistic women just as bad as there are men, but think about who you were before you got involved with this person, and who are you now in this basic shell that you have become. And what do you need to do in order to get a grip with the reality of what is happening in your relationship? And if you were listening to your person constantly play the victim in a story that they created, look at the pattern. Go back. How did each and every one of those relationships start, and how did they end? And if you're going to rely on children to tell you points and truth, remember, children will only say and do what they know protects them. And if there has been narcissistic abuse with you, odds are there have been narcissistic abuse with those kids. But then it goes back to, at one point in time in life, a child will grow up and they will see a situation just as it is. They will start to put all of those puzzle pieces together, looking to see really who was the bad guy, who was the good guy, who was isolated, who were you kept from because one parent was so angry that they decided they no longer could take the abuse. And I think right now, with what we are witnessing, and especially too, and this is just a little side thing, with Hayden Panettiere passing away, she had come out years ago talking about being on this yacht and being trafficked to somebody because she was made to believe something, and it contributed to a lot of her mental health issues. Again, I am not a doctor. I am not a psychologist. I am not a psychiatrist. No big MD. But when you start to see the repeating patterns of how people who were healthy and happy had a whole life in front of them, and then they get themselves involved with people and they are gaslit, they are manipulated, and their lives are destroyed. So it goes back to my Fitbit, Google. You know what? You got way too much information already. And I can't figure out why we have gotten to this point where one conglomerate needs to have that much information over who we are. And although I greatly, greatly appreciate all the platforms, but what is the end result? Is it so we can be swayed? So we can be gaslit, so we can be manipulated, so we can be talked into believing something that is not true? Or we get on an algorithm that says, hey, if I put this in front of you enough, you're going to buy, you're going to agree, you're going to like, you're going to become a part of. Is that what it's all about? And are you starting to recognize the pattern with all of your social medias? What is your feed saying? Where are you at that you are looking at something and all of a sudden it's all over your phone? What conversation are you having with whomever? Because I know by the time I'm done with this, I will have all kinds of psychology things on my For You pages. But I want to know, while I am sitting here waiting to be placed for my skill set, it won't be in the medical field. It won't be in any psychiatrist's office. But while I am waiting to be placed based on my skill set, knowing what I've studied, knowing my dream, knowing what I've always wanted to do from little on before somebody told me and made me believe I couldn't do it. I want you to examine your own life. Think about it. But I am Kitryn Marie, an artist, writer, speaker, life and business coach, reside in St. Louis, Missouri. Be happy, be blessed, be thankful for everything. Fate turns on a dime. It's up to you to decide what side of the coin you want to be on. You know, if you are disassociating from your relationship and you are becoming a shell of a form of somebody that you don't even recognize anymore, start to look at who you're with. Start to notice the pattern. Start asking the questions. If you have to dig a little deep to make yourself have some clarity and some real sanity, do the deep dive. You owe it to yourself. If you're interested in any of my art and communication classes, that's what I teach, art and communication, reach out, kitrynmarie@gmail.com. Looks like the sun is coming out. It was supposed to rain all day. Fingers crossed on where I'm going to be landed because it needs to happen real soon. But y'all take care, and I'll see you real soon. Thanks for this 46-minute rant. Y'all take care. Enjoy your day. Bye.